Warning, this video contains scenes that appear to have Headhunter gameplay. Please rest assured that no Headhunters were used during the making of this guide.
Greetings, Exiles. Are you looking for a build that can explode maps in huge pops? Have you ever dreamed of having a huge character but don't have 2 spare kidneys to pawn for a Headhunter and Badge of the Brotherhood? Are you looking for a way to burn out your graphics card so that your wife, girlfriend, mom, grandma will be okay with you buying a 3080? Are your hands burning from spamming flasks and picking up all that heist loot? Then stay tuned. This build farms tier 16s like crazy and can get you some real good loot, all on like a 25 Exalt budget. While you can invest more, I'd say that this is a good starting point. This build does not need a Headhunter to make it feel like you're playing with a Headhunter, and that's why I'm dubbing it the Fake Hunter. I've played a variation of this build before in the past, but started off right away with a Headhunter, so I could never tell if it was doable without the world's most expensive belt, but it sure is. The 3 key mechanics are an explodey chest to explode things, 2 inspired learnings to steal buffs, and self-curse temp chains to make this one of the smoothest builds I've ever played. By self-cursing, every buff and debuff on us is going to last 4 times as long, so your flasks, blade vortex, ball haste, grace, and righteous fire will all last 4 times as long. This means that you can spend more time running around like an angry volcanic Roomba instead of casting blade vortex. We're using Shackles of the Wretched to reflect our Herald of Thunder and Flame Dash's Hex Touch temporal chains. Yes, this still works. In 3.11, GGG made it so that gaining hexproof via Headhunter-like effects would remove any curses and make you hexproof to future curses. We're getting around this completely by using the Occultist Notable Profane Bloom to apply our curses anyways. Yes, for some reason we count as an enemy in this case. This lets us apply a super juiced up version of Temporal Chains that we combine with our 7C Solstice Vigil allows our buffs to last 4 times as long. Scaling up Temporal Chains will require any hat with 30% Temporal Chains curse effect and 3 medium cluster jewels. We're looking for Dark Discourse and 25% increased effect prefixes on these. Thankfully, that just requires a level 50 cluster jewel, so no need to buy a fancy high level one. Just make sure you have 6 passives, as you'll be grabbing all the small nodes. Once you get to the point where your PoB Calcs tab shows a 2.75 curse effect, you're good to go. Just make sure you're wearing Combs Roots to counteract the action speed slow, otherwise you're going to be swimming in molasses. Having all this extended buff duration allows us to really take advantage of the Inspired Learning Jewel. Each active Inspired Learning will get a random mod from rares you kill for 20 seconds. Since we're extending all our buffs by 4 times, that means each buff should last 80 seconds. This is what allows us to get absolutely massive and dense maps with just 2 Inspireds. We may be getting less buffs per rare killed versus a Headhunter, but having 4 times the duration more than makes up for it. A Headhunter would obviously be amazing for this build, but if you can't afford it, then Bisco's Leash is an excellent replacement. Rampage is amazing and can provide a stacking buff of up to 50% move speed and 200% increased damage. And yes, your Temporal Chains extends the time of Rampage as well. Awesome. Those sweet explosions come from a Crusader's Explodey chest. I recommend using an Astral Plate for the resists, but you can really use anything. Eventually, you might want a +1 curse chest, so keep that in mind. These explosions are really great because they provide a solid explosion that triggers anytime an enemy is killed by you. Physical damage is nice, but we're going to convert the explosion to mostly fire by using an Anger Watcher's Eye and a Signal Fire Quiver. Since our damage is now primarily fire, that lets us get a lot of mileage out of Herald of Ash. Herald of Ash is different from the other heralds in that it provides several percentage-based damage buffs. At level 20, 12% more spell fire damage will buff our Blade Vortex, and the 15% physical added as extra fire is pretty nice. We're going to amplify this further by using Circle of Anguish rings. These unique rings are found from Synthesis map bosses and can have 2 unique mods on them. Increased fire damage and Herald of Ash buff effect will both boost our damage. Since these are Synthesis uniques, they can also have up to 3 different implicit mods, including Flammability on hit, While getting this extra curse can be nice, it's by no means mandatory. We're also going to be grabbing jewels that provide life, cold or lightning resistance, and damage. Look for any damage mod that will scale the explosion from your body armor. It's also a good idea to find a jewel that will make you immune to corrupted blood and another to make you immune to silence. Since we have incredible buff and debuff duration in this build, it is really important that you're immune here. It can be really hard to hit res cap without any buffs, so if you're really stressed out about it, you can use a Wise Oak Flask. This is really nice for the res, but you'll probably be stealing all sorts of resistance modifiers from enemies once you get going, so being a few points shy is not really a big deal. I prefer using Taste of Hate for the damage and reduced damage taken. Besides that, Cinder Swallow is really key for fast recovery. Since you can regain up to 3% of your maximum life with every kill, you can easily completely heal yourself in a moment with a chain explosion. Another thing to note is that when you're stealing buffs, you'll likely gain a lot of energy shield, and Cinder Swallow will restore that as well. Next, let's talk about the bow. This is a great place where you can start off budget and then really scale up. A good start would be to grab a 6-link bow that already has the right colors, and then slap an Essence of Woe on it, and craft fire as extra chaos damage, and just call it a day. That's the relatively cheap option. The more expensive option is a little bit more complicated and probably deserves its own video, and RNG's was decidedly cruel in my crafting adventure, making my own bow, and I kinda just wish that I bought one. Note that multi-modding a bow with Essence of Woe, fire as extra chaos, and +2 supports is almost as good as this. So might as well take advantage of the cheap Exalt prices right now and do that. For Pantheons, I use Solaris and Aberrath. Aberrath is key for avoiding burning ground and reducing ignite damage, both of which are major weak points of the build. Lastly, let's talk about how I play the build in a map. First off, do not run Reflect or Temporal Chains maps. The map version of Temporal Chains is significantly weaker than the version we want to reflect onto ourselves and will not grant you the same long-lasting effect that yours does. At the start of the map, you'll have no buffs and no temporal chains on you, so your goal is to start killing and get temporal chains on you ASAP. What I normally do is unleash some blades and then flame dash into the first monsters I see. Normally, this should kill any white monsters, and your flame dash hit should reflect temporal chains back onto you. From there, I just flask up, unleash more blades, and then run around killing things. In a juice map, I'll wait until my Vol skills are all filled up, and then I'll use Vol Haste and Grace on cooldown. This should trigger an approximate 15-second soul gain prevention window, but since Haste lasts 28 seconds and Grace 40 seconds, you should be able to completely refill their soul counts before they expire. Vol Righteous Fire will grant you a solid more multiplier to your Blade Vortex damage, but this will not boost your explosion damage. I generally only use this in spots where I really need to burst and combine it with Vol Blade Vortex. These two make blasting down beefy targets a lot easier, like Allies Cannot Die rares. Keeping up flasks is really easy in this build as they last an absurd amount of time, as do your Blade Vortex stacks. One thing to watch out for is making sure that Volatiles, Lightning Mirages, and Delirium Bombers don't touch you. This is an easy way to die. You should be able to avoid them. And that's it for my guide. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below or come by the stream at twitch.tv/DonTheCrown. Thank you very much.